Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, my guest is Ryan Schmalz. Ryan, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Matt. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Good.
I'm happy you came on the show. Decided to come on the show. We connected on in the wonderful and extensive Instagram sober community. It's just,
Yep.
I really enjoy what you're doing with your Instagram account. I think it's great. You're adding some humor.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
also talking about I love it, man. It's like the blend of humor with also some getting into the content. You're not
hmm
bypassing anything. So I really appreciate that. And you got a really good eye for, the way that you set it up on your account. There's some of
hmm
the, there's videos, and then you have you kind of alternate between the two. So aesthetically, it looks very pleasing as well. So I want to give you the shout out right away.
Well, thank you.
Anybody that's on Instagram that's in this community, it is a lot of my listeners. Anybody that is not following Ryan, check him out. The Sober Mountain is
Yes.
the Instagram handle, and I love the whole idea of nature and combining like adventure and like, as you say,
hmm
summiting the mountain of your sobriety. So the whole thing is this really, really works for me. So, dude, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the social media plug. I love that. So I like to put humor into those things because we do talk about something that is very serious. But it's also nice to have a little bit of lightheartedness to things because, it gets tough at times, definitely, but you need to have a little humor in your life. You need to smile and you need to laugh. So
Yeah, definitely.
mhm.
Well, I'm getting the impression, just like in your bio, in your Instagram here, it says like motivation, mindset, humor. So I'm imagining those are some of either your pillars or sort of core values or your approach to sobriety. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. At first, motivation is kind of fleeting, so you obviously need to do the work, but yeah, there's three things that I kind of just pride myself on. It's my mindset, my motivation, and being able to see the lighter side of things and laugh about things. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
mhm.
sense. I love the humor. I follow a few of those, the sober memes,
Yeah,
which are always hilarious. And, that's such a great, pattern disruption for some of the other ones that are, like you say, we are dealing with some like a darker, or just like
mm,
we're uncovering some of the darkness, right? So that, like you say, you're doing the work, but you're also having a little bit of a laugh, which is one of the better
totally.
pattern disruptions, or a release, right? Instead of crying, you can laugh and have a similar sort of release. So very, very
Exactly.
cool. Very cool.
Mhm.
Awesome, man. What did you come up with the idea of like summiting the mountain of your sobriety? Are you an outdoorsman yourself? Is that just sort of more
So
of the metaphor?
a little bit, but it's more of a metaphor. Like for me, when I was first starting out in my sobriety, that's kind of how I saw getting sober. It was this huge, like insurmountable just impasse that I had no idea how to get over. You can't necessarily go around it. So it all starts with just taking that first step, right? So that's kind of how I envisioned my sobriety. It was just like, okay, the only way to scale this mountain is to do it one step at a time, and you have to face what's in front of you.
It's nice.
hmm
When you're saying like, yeah, and that's a big part of, when you get into like recovery rooms or things of that nature, the one day at a time, one moment at a time, you're saying one step at a time.
hmm
How easy has that been for you to do? Like, for example, if there are some of those harder days and we're feeling that overwhelm, how
Yeah.
easy is it for you to reconnect and reground to that, that one step at a time?
Yeah. At first, it was super, super difficult, right? Because we as humans tend to think of things in the long term as like forever. And it's very, very difficult for us to conceptualize, like, okay, I'm going to be sober forever, right? So at first it was really difficult, but then as I started to kind of shift my mindset towards just taking things like literally hour by hour, like today is really all we have. So it's all about kind of just reconceptualizing things and saying to yourself, okay, look, this is what you have in front of you today. Just attack the day. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about yesterday. Look at the 24 hours in front of you and, just live the best life that you can live, without alcohol, obviously.
Yeah. Definitely worth saying that at the end there for sure.
Right, right.
And it's looking like you're coming up on, so looks like July 31st of 2021. Is that correct? As far as a
Yeah.
sober birthday?
Yep. So coming up on 20 months here in a couple days. So
Yeah, congrats, man. That's awesome.
thank you. It's
Yeah.
been wild, the
Yeah.
whole entire experience, but it's something that I would never throw away.
Yeah. I'm curious, and I want to give you an opportunity to go, roll the clocks back and go to the very beginning. Before I do, though, I'm just curious, like, what was it initially like a 30-day challenge? Like, what started out that sober journey for you?
Yeah. So for me initially, I always kind of like toyed around with the idea of doing the whole dry January thing. And that's kind of where it started, but there's way more before that we can talk about in a little bit. But it started out with like a dry January sort of thing. And then I started to notice these subtle changes in my life when I stopped drinking, that led me to kind of examine everything a little bit more, to where I'm at now. So it definitely started out with like one of those challenges, but even before that, I knew I had a pretty destructive relationship with alcohol.
Interesting.
Hmm.
So by the time that you had, you tried this dry January thing, by the time you hit the summer of 2021 there, I
Yeah.
imagine it's like, okay, you kind of give yourself an ultimatum or however you want to view
You
it.
know what? It's
Yeah.
funny. I didn't necessarily give myself, well, I gave myself an ultimatum, but also my fiance now, who was my
Ah,
girlfriend at the time,
yeah.
um, our relationship was amazing, but there was that one thing holding it back, and it was my drinking, right? So she kind of gave me an ultimatum and was like, look, I love you. You're an amazing person, but I do not like the person you are when you drink. And she knew that I was struggling with alcohol. And I told her myself, like, I don't like the person I am when I drink. Um, and that kind of led me to really re-examine it, because, I did not want to, one, lose myself, but lose her as well. So that day was the day that I was like, all right, this is it. And I have not had a sip since. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
yeah. Mhm.
How there's always the first initial challenges. Like, what was the hardest thing for you? Like, I've heard there's, for example, like the most common ones that I hear is like the social circle
Yeah.
drastically changes. A lot of your friends, quote unquote, like from before, are revealed more as like the drinking buddies, or they don't necessarily relate to the changes that you made. And then there's also these feelings that you're not necessarily practiced at because you've been spending a lot of time numbing them. So I'm curious, what was the most challenging thing for you in those first couple months?
Yeah, early sobriety was kind of like a shit show for me. It it really made me, first I look inward, and you're right, you suppress these emotions that you have. And for me, alcohol was, even in my, high school and college days, was a crutch for my social anxiety, for my
Mm,
depression, because, at first, though, alcohol, like you said, it suppresses those feelings. So it made me feel a little bit better about myself. Like I didn't feel as suppressed until you start learning that alcohol actually makes those things worse. But so when these feelings start to come back up, I didn't work a program. I just had a great support system. I did a lot of reading, like Quit Lit and all of that kind of stuff. Like This Naked Mind was kind of what opened my mind to those things. Shout out to Annie Grace on that.
yeah. Yeah.
And I just kind of dove into educating myself around what alcohol does to your mind, to your body.
Mm,
And that's kind of what motivated me through those early months. But uh, the friends that I had, who I've been friends with since high school, at first, they really kind of did not accept what I was doing. We've been in the same social circle our entire life, right? So they are heavy drinkers, and every single time I told them, like, I'm stopping drinking, I'm trying to stop drinking, they're like, okay, yeah, Ryan, we know, like, we've heard this record before, we
right.
understand.
Right.
And it never stuck, right? So they were obviously super skeptical about the whole thing. And until I got some time under my belt with my sobriety, that's when they kind of came around to it, like, oh, Ryan doesn't drink anymore. But in the beginning months there, like, we did not talk very much.
Mhm.
And still, even now, it's like we see each other very few times, just because for me, in order to protect my sobriety, I need to stay away from, those destructive behaviors.
Mhm.
It's nothing against them. It's just one of those things where it's like, look, this is how I want to live my life. If if you're supportive of me, great, hop on. If not, see you later, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So friendships are definitely tested. Emotions, like there are times where you would cry for no reason at all. It would be like,
Yeah.
the most beautiful day in the world, and all of a sudden you're crying. You're like, why am I crying? Um,
Yeah.
but it's learning to kind of like just cope with those feelings, especially in early sobriety. Like it is a mess, and it's the work that you need to put in to get over that hump. It's a lot, but it's beautiful too. Like that's why I think if you have the opportunity to really examine your relationship with alcohol and just like attack it and be kind of like an examiner of your life,
Mm.
I think it can be really helpful. I think it's beautiful. It's something that I honestly would recommend to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I
Yeah.
kind of jumped around, but
No, that's great. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you totally answered the question.
Mhm.
Yeah, was there anything else that came up as far as like I'm thinking, okay, so things that you had to change. Was there any
Yeah.
side benefits that you weren't like, for example, did you make it into a different social circle, or did you pick up did you start going, what I mean, go to the gym, or did you
Yeah.
take up anything else that you always wanted to, but drinking was sort of getting in the way of?
Yeah, I guess one of the main reasons why I stopped drinking too in the first place was just I felt stuck in my life. I felt stuck personally. I felt stuck professionally. Like I wasn't growing, and I had this just burning desire inside of me that like I know I'm meant to do something great, and I feel like everybody has that inside of them, but um, I wasn't really acting on that. So for me, when I stopped drinking, it was you have all of this time now that you're not wasting at the bar or with friends or being hungover, and you really
Yeah.
start to examine every aspect of your life. So there are a ton of things I picked up. Like fitness for me was huge,
Mm.
especially because I have a history of, mental illness, not only in myself, but in my family. So in order for me to kind of cope with things in a healthy way, getting into the gym was what really kind of ignited my journey even further. It's a crutch for me, but it's also a healthy crutch. There's other things that I could be doing, but
Yeah.
personal fitness, like physical fitness, is huge for me. I love to journal. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people in the sober community and sober circle pick up is journaling, because it really is like a cathartic way to deal with your feelings. And it's not even like I'm journaling pages and pages. It's just a page a day, kind of write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And then I go through, okay, what happened to yesterday? What happened today? Or what's going on today? What do you have going on in the future? So I journal every morning. I read every morning for about, I would say, 30 to 45 minutes. So I'm a very structured person.
Mm.
And I think it's incredibly important to structure, especially in early sobriety, just structure your days out, right?
Yeah.
Because any
Yeah.
sort of idle time that you have, it's either going to end up to you thinking about drinking, or you're going to end up acting on those thoughts. So
Yeah.
um, that's kind of where I gravitated towards, was physical fitness, journaling, reading. I got to dive into my business a little more, take it a bit more seriously. I got to kind of explore my relationship with my family and my fiance now, which has been incredible. When you're drinking, you have all of these kind of relationships that you just kind of take at face value, right? I never really realized that the relationships you made when you were drinking aren't necessarily like real relationships, right? They're more
Mm.
acquaintances. And when you stop drinking, that's when you finally realize, like, okay, these are the people who care about me. These are the people who support me. These are the people who love me. I want to spend my time with them, and everybody else can go F off.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it. Yeah. For sure. For sure.
You know,
There's so many similarities between the way that the people are recovering and doing their sobriety, like and that, like even what you were saying, even myself, like that, the morning routine, some structure, making sure you don't have the downtime, the idle time, especially in early sobriety. I can
mhm,
say, and did the physical fitness, yeah, like that was how I all that extra energy that I used from like getting over on people or lying to people or going, what I
right.
mean, going all the different beer stores around so they didn't think I was like coming in every day, and all this nonsense I was doing, I was able to put into physical fitness. So yeah, very similar that way, the journaling. What is it with the morning? Because like I view it as this, like I used to dread mornings because I'd wake up
Mhm.
hungover and just be like, man, I'd like have like 15 minutes to get ready for work or whatnot. I hated mornings, right? Slam a
Mhm.
coffee, go to work. And now like mornings are my favorite time of day. Like, did you find that similar transition, or was it more so just out of the need to get some structure? Like, how are mornings for you nowadays versus before?
Mornings are my favorite time of the day. It's a time for myself before the world wakes up. It's like you have this nice little peaceful pocket that you can do the things that you need to do in order to kind of protect your sobriety. And for me, that's, journaling, working out, reading. Like those three things really just get my mind into a place where I know I'll be able to attack the rest of the day. So early mornings are like my sacred time. Like I said, nobody's awake. Like I take the dog for a walk, I do my thing, and honestly, it's the only time that I really, really protect for myself. And then
Hmm.
the rest of the day, as it comes, I kind of deal with it then. But the morning, pretty much, I'm up at 5 o'clock, and it's kind of natural. Like my dad was a car mechanic for many years, and he was up at like 3:30 in the morning. So I don't know if it's like inherited, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how I've been.
Sure, sure.
So I'm usually up at 5 a.m. and I do, and I know a lot of people have kids and things like that, so it's difficult for them to really have a long morning routine. But um, I'm very blessed to be able to have, a couple hours to myself in the morning where I can get that work done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. I want to hear, more about like what your origin story is with alcohol, and how it progressed and, eventually, got on top of you to the point that you made the decision that you made that we've been talking about here. So yeah,
Hmm.
just take your time, roll back the clocks, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about your whole relationship or drinking career, if you will.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it started, I have a wonderful family and a wonderful support system. But that family comes with a history of alcoholism, addiction, um, a series of mental illnesses, anxiety, depression, things like that. So the mental cards were kind of stacked against me, but every other kind of advantage that you could ask for in life, I was blessed with. And it's something that I've kind of really had to look back and deal with and say, okay, how did I get to the point when I was drinking? Like I literally, it felt like I wasted all the opportunities that I was given in life.
Mhm.
And I started drinking when I was, uh, 15. So I remember the day perfectly. My buddies and I, we went back to this. There's like a golf course that we live by. There's a little path, and we all had our little like 6 packs of beer and whatnot. And we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna try drinking for the first time. So it's funny because the first time that you drink, you're like, this is disgusting. Like, what are we doing? And then obviously you kind of get acclimated to the taste, and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. I feel kind of funny. This is nice. So started drinking when I was 15, and I didn't really start really heavily drinking for a couple of years later. So in high school, I was an athlete and I was so focused on sports that kind of drinking wasn't on my mind, until, you go through puberty and things happen and you're like, all right, I'm going to start focusing on girls and, and drinking and partying. And that's kind of where my mindset was focused on. Um, so that started to have a little bit of effect on me mentally. When I was 18, right before I went to college, was when my anxiety and depression first kind of showed.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it hit me like a freight train. I had no idea what was going on. I remember driving back with my mom, and I literally was bawling my eyes out, and I was telling her, like, I don't know what's going on with me, but I need to see somebody to talk about this because I do not know what I'm going to do to myself.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and it was right like a week before college started. So I think it had a lot to do with not only, the drinking, but also just sometimes you start to big changes in my life really affect me a little bit that way. Like mentally, I start to get very anxious. Um, so I end up going to college, and I'm a short dude. I'm like 5'6", And at the time I weighed 155 pounds, but they put me on my therapist put me on Zoloft, and it destroyed me. I lost like 18 pounds. So I was like a buck 38 as like a 5'6". That was small, right? So in college, at first I wasn't drinking because I didn't know how the medicine was going to affect me and things like that, and that mixing it with alcohol. So it kind of scared me a bit. But I shortly realized that it suppressed my feelings of anxiety and depression even more. So I gravitated towards alcohol. And in college, that is what the culture is, right? It's binge drinking, it's partying. And as a freshman, you're going in there and they're telling you, get involved, get involved. So I see this table tent at the dining center, and it was for a like business and social fraternity. And it really helped me with my anxiety and depression, just doing those tasks and joining that, and doing the whole pledge process. It's very labor intensive, really. But it also comes with the social side of things, which is binge drinking. And it got to the point where freshman, sophomore year I was doing great. Junior year, when I turned 21, I was drinking nonstop, right? Because I had the ability to, granted, it's not very hard to get alcohol in college underage, but when you turn 21, you have the freedom to do anything, really, right? So just because I had that freedom, I took advantage of it, like full advantage of it. And I lived at the university over the summers too, just because I liked to be able to not have any rules with my parents. So much, in fact, that I lied about getting an internship when I was a junior because I wanted to spend the summer down there. And it was basically just so I could party down there the entire summer. And it got to the point where I didn't go to class. I was completely focused on drinking. My grades plummeted. I had to pull out of that university. And at the time that I left, I was 180 pounds. So it's a 50-pound swing from freshman year to junior year. And that's just drinking and making poor food decisions and things like that. But ultimately, it was a way for me to deal with the pressures of college, the anxiety and depression that I felt. It's just really, really poor coping mechanisms. And it affected me for a very long time. So fast forward a couple of years, I get my degree and I'm starting to look for a job. And, I worked in restaurant industries and all of that. So I wasn't drinking as much as I was in college, but I was still going out partying. It was more Monday through Thursday. I'm not going to drink. Friday, Saturday, let it all hang out. So it was more binge drinking. And once I got my first job, my first actual job, career, I worked for one of the largest independent craft breweries in Illinois. So I went from drinking in college to taking a little bit of break from drinking to my whole career was drinking. And that's kind of when I started to see the worst parts of alcohol, because at that time, I'm 25, I'm 26, I'm 27, and you start to feel the effects of your drinking a little bit more, right? The physical effects, the mental side of things. And it was completely acceptable in my job to go in there, you talk to a bar owner and you're trying to sell them beer. And most of the time, those bar owners are like, okay, yeah, drink this with me, have a drink, have a shot. So it's like 2 p.m, 3 p.m, where, we're drinking. And it's, again, a culture that was not great for me. And it just kind of propelled my drinking even more. Then after that, I left that industry because it was bad for me, bad for my health, all of that. It's stressful. I was continuously drinking. And then I ended up getting into sales, and sales is another very, it's a lucrative business, but it is also a business where there's a lot of stress, and a lot of people deal with stress with drinking alcohol. I did the same thing. So I continuously drank. And then when COVID hit, that's when, I don't necessarily say I had a rock bottom, but I had multiple shallow bottoms that led me to really re-examining my relationship with alcohol. So when COVID hit and we were kind of in lockdown and there were stay-at-home orders and all of that, there really wasn't anything to do. And at the time, I lived right across the street from a liquor store. So I was there multiple times a week, just continuously picking up booze. I was drinking nonstop, and to the point where you start lying to friends and family and the people that you love the most and that are closest to you. And once I got to that point, I started to think like, look, I cannot continue to put my body through this. I cannot continue to put my friends through this, my family through this. Like, I really need to look deep within myself and kind of check, what I'm doing. And after I kind of had that epiphany moment, that's when I really started to look into, quit lit and researching things, just really diving into all of the educational aspects around what alcohol does to your mind, your body, all of that. And it took me 7 or 8 serious tries for my sobriety to stick. Like, I would get 3 or 4 days in and I would go back to drinking. I would get 10 days and then something would happen like, oh, I made it 10 days, right? You kind of trick yourself to thinking like, if I can do 10 days, like I can stop drinking whenever. And then I would fall back into the same old patterns. So I did that 7 or 8 times until, July 31st of 21, which was the day after a wedding that I went to where I got absolutely shit-faced to the point where I wasn't in the wedding, but I ended up somehow on the wedding party's bus. They took me to the hotel. They had to carry me up to my room and put me to sleep. And that was one of those moments where I was like, all right, you can't really do this anymore. And then the conversation I had with my fiance after that was like, all right, this is really it. So it took a lot of trial and error. It took a lot of pain. It took a lot of self-reflection. But honestly, now that I am where I'm at, I want to just share with people that, like, even if you're a younger person, like, you can do this. And on the other side of drinking, that's kind of where your world starts to really open up. So long story, but that's kind of where my origins were. Like I said, I do have some history of alcoholism in my family. So, I do understand the effects that alcoholism may have, effects in your hereditary and things like that. But, I never really classified myself as your quote unquote alcoholic. But that's what I was. It took a while for me to really see that and admit that to myself.
Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
It's there's again, yeah, there's a lot of similarities, specifically with my story. I'm hearing a lot. It's like that's one of the best parts that I like about recovery is when you hear other people's stories and you can sort of hear at least parts of your own story in theirs. And it's just, it feels so, there's like this connection that you can get from that. And it's sort of like when you hear a song that hits you a certain way that like you realize that you're not the only one going through that. So it's yeah, that's why I love the origin stories and the whole thing. So thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, no problem. It's nice. That's what I love so much about the sober community is like we all have this kind of shared experience or going through this shared experience.
Yeah.
And that's something that I didn't know was there until very, very recently. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, very cool. Are you comfortable talking about some of the you more or less touched on it, like some of the mental health side of things, because I know that's a big thing. It's it's along with recovery, and I say the last 3 to 5 years is getting a lot more normalized, which is wonderful. There's still some room to go though. So are you comfortable getting into that a little bit as well, and how that has been for
Absolutely.
you in the last 20 months?
Yeah. Recovery for me, at first was really difficult. it's a lot. It's not only the physical symptoms you get, like, your pause, your physical, the acute withdrawal symptoms. I saw a little bit of that. I know there are people who it really, really affects them. And that's when you need to see a doctor and things like that. For me, just stopping cold turkey, you get the sweats, you get the insomnia, things like that, especially in early sobriety. That was very difficult for me to deal with. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I would make it like 4 days and I would be like, all right, I feel like shit. I need to go back to drinking because I do not want to feel like this anymore. So you have that part of it, but then the mental side of things, my anxiety and depression actually got a little bit worse when I was a few months in. I think that I've spent so much time just kind of pushing it down and pushing it away with alcohol that I didn't really realize what it was doing. And when those feelings came back up, I had to find like healthy coping mechanisms. And that's, like I said, that's when I started like diving into the gym. There are times where, you question, is this worth it? Things like that. And you just kind of have to, rely on your support group and the people close to you that have seen the changes in you from when you stopped drinking. And that was huge for me. Like my parents are still drink, but they are like my biggest cheerleaders, and I'm incredibly blessed to have them. And same with my fiance, because they were the ones who were like, Ryan, we see a difference in you from day one. This was like day 1 to day 60. They're like, you're happier, you look healthier. And it gets to the point where, like, look, if you are really, really struggling, you need to reach out to somebody else other than your internal support system, right? So that's when you start reaching out to professionals who can really, really help you. And luckily, I've had a lot of kind of not training, but discussions with, my therapist and my psychiatrist, to the point where, I don't need to use antidepressants anymore, which is a huge win for me. But I know it's there if you ever need it. And that's what they're for, right? They're additional tools that if you need it, take it. But yeah, I struggled a lot with that. And it takes a long time, right? Once you kind of learn how to deal with these things in a healthy way, they start to get better. But it's not, especially my mindset was like sobriety is going to fix all of my problems. I quickly realized that it does not. You have to, that's when they say, do the work, right?
Yeah.
You have to do the work. And that opens up a lot of, childhood trauma. It opens up a lot of just honestly trauma in general. It could be anything. And if you don't deal with those things head on, that's when we start seeing relapses and things like that. It's just so easy to get back into that cycle if you don't have a plan and if you're not working towards those goals. So
yeah, for sure. For sure. I got a couple more questions for you here, Ryan. Really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great interview. We touched on at the beginning, the social circle. You've talked a little bit about the family dynamic. Obviously, with social circles, like you mentioned, there's if it doesn't jive with you, and not saying you don't still care for the people, and vice versa, and there might be room for it in the future to come back to those friendships. Family a little bit more challenging, right? Because you have family or family. So there, and you mentioned your parents are still drinking. A big part of like aftercare or coming out or maintaining sobriety is sort of redefining these boundaries and these roles. Because I think family, obviously they've known you your whole life, so they have this idea of you, and then there's these pockets of time they don't see you potentially. I don't know where you are in proximity to your parents, if you see them every week, but it's that's a conversation, just a topic I'd like to bring up. How has the family dynamics changed as far as the way that people interact with you within your own family?
Yeah, it's super interesting because they were kind of at first the same. They were always very supportive, whatever I wanted to do. But, I put up this persona of myself where I was, the life of the party. I was always drinking and things like that. When I stopped, it took them a while to kind of acclimate to like, oh, Ryan doesn't really drink anymore. So, there's a time even my grandma was like, here, Ryan, do you want a beer? And I'm like, Grandma, I've been sober for like 3 months. She's like, Oh, that's right. Sorry, I forgot. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
relationships change. Like I said, I have been very, very blessed to have a very supportive family. And they've always cheered me on. The friends aspect of things, it's been difficult, just because it's different for them. And I think when I stopped drinking, they kind of got into their heads about their drinking as well. And
Mhm.
when it's sometimes you can see it when you stop drinking, that the people that are close to you who are heavy drinkers, if you don't drink, they start to get a little bit uncomfortable because they're like, well, do I drink too much? Am
Yeah,
I
yeah.
drinking too much? What's my relationship with alcohol like? And I think it just made them feel a little bit uncomfortable. And we're still kind of at that point. For me now, when I'm making new friends, first of all, it's hard to make new friends. But secondly, this community has helped a lot. The sober community has helped me kind of connect with people who are in the same kind of social circles.
Yeah.
But it's just, you kind of realize like what relationships are serving you, not in like a selfish way, just those that kind of lift you up and that you can share things with. And there are people out there who do not care whether or not you drink or not. They just like want to be around you because of the person that you are. And that's kind of what I've started to gravitate towards. But to answer your question, yeah, my family relationship has been great. The dynamics at first, they needed some time to shift, but I think that it's everything in life, especially when you get sober.
Yeah.
There is just like this little buffer period where people, the things that you used to do, like you just kind of need to acclimate to where you are now. So yeah, I've had great relationships, and hopefully, I can continue to grow on those relationships, because one of the things that I love about getting sober is that the conversations that I have with these people who are close to me are so much deeper, and I feel so much more connected to them than I did when I was drinking. Because I think a lot of the conversations that you have when you're drinking, first of all, you don't remember. Secondly, they can be superficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Nice, buddy. Nice.
Hmm.
One final question for you here today. You mentioned your business. Are you like a small business owner? What do you have going on
Yeah,
there? I'm interested how that, and that's a big a big question too, how that has bloomed or blossomed or, acclimated to
definitely.
you, the sober version of you.
So I am in my I actually work with my mom. And
Nice.
we are in real estate. She's been doing it for about 30 years. My dad's a home inspector, so it's kind of like this family business.
Very cool.
And at first I did not want to get into it. It was kind of like, screw you, mom and dad. I don't want to do this whole family business thing. I want to do my own thing. And
Of course.
kind of just bucking the trend. And I was like,
Yeah.
screw you. Yeah, whatever, mom. But it's always something that I love. Like, I
Yeah.
grew up in model homes. She started out in new home construction, and then I started to get into resale with her. So I've been doing that for about 5 years now. The first 3 years I was heavily drinking, and
Mm.
it for me, my mom is a self-made woman, and she was not helping me at all. And like, I commend her for that, because one, she saw how much I was struggling with alcohol, but she realized, like, if you want to grow your side of the business, you really need to take a good hard look at yourself, because I'm not going to give you anything. I will be there to
Ah.
mentor you,
Mhm.
but you need to get your act together,
Yeah.
and then you will start to see things grow. So in the past 2 years, my business has grown 5 times as much as
Nice.
it was. And
Yeah.
that is, I give all of the credit to my sobriety for that, because it allowed me to dive into just productivity and systems. And you start researching all these things, and how you can be like, how you can grow a business and things like that. And if I was continuing to drink, I wouldn't have had the time to just sit down and really focus on that. Because like I said, when you stop drinking, you need to fill your time with things. And this is what I dove into. A lot of people dive into work. I understand how that is. But it's been incredible. So
Right on.
mhm,
Right on.
yeah.
Where can folks find you online? And do you have anything coming up for 2023 as far as increasing your presence in the sober community? I'll just give you the last opportunity just to plug anything you want to plug.
Awesome. Yeah. So right now I'm at the Sober Mountain on Instagram. That's predominantly where I'm at. I love to kind of just share my story posts. I like to make funny reels. If you want to check them out, they make me laugh. I hope they make other people laugh.
Definitely.
And in the future, I'm working on the Sober Mountain blog. It's something that I'm, toying around with. And then way down in the future, my goal is to open up a sober bar and cafe where people can come in, kind of just have a safe space, whether it's during the day or at night, that they can hang out and not feel any of these social pressures from having to go to a bar or meeting friends at places that don't serve non-alcoholic beverages and things like that. And that's my main goal. And I would love for some percentage of profits to go to younger people struggling with addiction and mental health, whether it's a nonprofit that I start for myself or if it's one that I can donate to. That's the goal in the long run of things. Will it happen? Oh, let's hope so. But that's, my 10-year plan, I guess.
I
So
love it, man.
yeah, that's where I'm looking at.
Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the final topic, if we'll put a bow on this. I've noticed you mentioned a few times just the reaching out to like the younger people, right? Catch them before it gets to the stage perhaps that it got for you, right? So what would be just a final piece of advice that you could say for somebody that is perhaps a little bit younger, a little bit sober curious, on the fence, if they want to go the sober route? What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that continuing to be just an examiner of your life and see how, like, try to take breaks, right? Take a couple week break and see how you feel without alcohol. If you feel that like alcohol isn't serving you and it's not aligning with who you are, and you feel like something is holding you back and you don't know what it is, it's probably your relationship with alcohol. So if you can eliminate that and focus really in on like what makes you wake up in the morning and really hone into, okay, this is what I want to do with my life, you'll start to realize that alcohol doesn't really have, a place in that. And honestly, to take it easy. Like it's so hard, and it's we are so hard on ourselves as human beings. Like, give yourself some grace, take it as an experiment, and just find a community, or anything really to hold on to and focus on your goals. I know that's a lot, but that's kind of what I would tell somebody.
Yeah, the summary, and you had said that word earlier, the examiner. I guess the summary, if you could just like refine it to just be an examiner, be
Yep.
curious about what your relationship is with alcohol. To summarize, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's it. Just
Yeah.
really look at your life and how alcohol is serving you or not serving you in your life, and always be curious.
Yeah, man. Ryan, at the Sober Mountain on Instagram. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. And yeah, well, I'll definitely catch up with you sometime down the road.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.